Corsair Cove starts off as a city builder, where you need to keep your drifters alive. But soon enough, you build your first ship and you're off exploring the seven seas, and get to choose your path, where you become a pirate legend by confronting the undead captain known as the Reaper. Will you stand to defy the crown despite their overwhelming force? Or are you simply in it to get rich and retire to a small island? Make sure to keep your drifters well supplied while you're doing all that, otherwise they might make you walk the plank. Big thanks to Hooded Horse for sending me a key, and with that, let's get right into it. Now, Corsair Cove features vertical building, which means the entire cliff face is your canvas, but the island's still relatively small, so space remains at a premium. And initially, I found myself building supply clusters, because I realized that distribution hubs like the Galleon Tavern automatically provide resources to everyone within the pirate camp once they're supplied. And since I wanted to minimize the travel distance for my resource production, I'd simply build it right near the distributor. Works perfectly well at first, but then things get a little bit more complicated, because higher tier ships mean more discerning pirates who require more complex resources with intricate supply chains, and you might even have to get raid goods, which are only obtainable by searching the seven seas. But how do you do that? Well, the first step is building a ship at your pier, crewing it with the meanest, baddest pirates you can find, and then setting sail.
Buccaneer's End. The name says it all. The Crown rules these waters. They keep a special prison for the likes of us.
As you send your ships out to explore the seven seas, different areas of the map are revealed, each coming with its own intro cutscene. What you just saw was Buccaneer's End, an area under the Crown's boot. But right now, I'm exploring the Crossbone Keys, where I've found a Spanish treasure fleet. While my ship isn't perfectly suited for it, I believe in Teach. After all, if Blackbeard can't rob a treasure fleet, then no one can. And this is where Corsair Cove's unique combat system comes into play. It looks a bit like a card game, but it's a lot less card game and a lot more TTRPG. While each of these cards define the actions you could take, what really matters for most encounters is stats. For example here, after approaching the ship, I now need to reduce the enemy health and crew below 75%. The enemy ship is attempting to fire, dealing a small amount of damage because their gun damage is fairly low. Since my steel edge has high armor, I don't really have to worry that much. I could use nasty harpoons, which is likely to prevent all of the damage, and deal a bit of damage of my own. It's maybe not as high as if I had better boarding damage, but should be more than sufficient. For example, if I select Make Them Bleed, the dice roll is responsible for the 9 to 12, as opposed to simply dealing 9 every time. And so with that, I have myself plus 500 coins. But back to the city building. What do things look like as the sprawl starts to grow? Well, your pirates have interesting methods of transportation, like these zip lines, that are very good at getting a pirate from a high place down to a low place. And as you can see here, oh boy do I have a lot of them, because I'm transporting resources from here, through here, through here, and all the way over, so that I can connect multiple pirate camps, producing or harvesting goods in one location, bringing them somewhere else, refining them, and distributing them. But even then, as my colony has grown, space does start to become a premium, at which point it becomes about demolishing old buildings to make room for new ones, or using the all hands on deck buff to make your existing buildings far more productive, which is exactly what I did with this production hub here. But the rarest goods like tobacco are raid goods. These and must be found in the seven seas, and for that, you're going to need a good captain.
Hundreds are rotting in the bloody Bastille. Break 'em out, and they'll beg us to take 'em in.
I suppose having more hands wouldn't hurt? If they wash themselves first?
The bloody Bastille. Trust the Crown to bring the worst of the old world into the new.
If they think the name alone will scare us off, they're wrong. That prison is ours to break.
You start off with 4 captains: Teach, Kanja, Scarlet, and Honorata, and they're always happy to chime in whenever you discover a new location. This does a good job of tying the mechanics, i.e. assigning a captain like Teach to a destroyer-class ship because he bolsters the gun damage, to the storytelling. And so I think it's about time to talk about victory conditions, because the characters you play as, the captains you collect, very much tie into your path to victory. There's 4 of them. Notoriety, where you pursue fame, and attempt to confront the Reaper himself. Wealth, which is exactly what you'd think, getting unimaginably wealthy in the City of Gold. Empire, where you unite the various factions, including the Tribe Alliance, to confront the crown more directly. Or Seafaring, where it's not about gold or glory. It's about riding the perfect wave, or at the very least, surviving a Kraken attack. Each victory path requires a different ship, which requires a different crew. Nothing is stopping you from pursuing all of them, but I can tell you from personal experience, the game is far easier when you pursue one victory path, and much more difficult if you pursue them all. Now, I do have some more thoughts on Corsair Cove. Before that though, a quick reminder, if you're enjoying the video, get subscribed, I'm going to be making more. Also, if you want to see all of my reviews, check out my Steam Curator page. It's down below, along with a Nexus link where you can buy the game, and a portion of your purchase helps to support me, which means I'll be able to make more videos just like this. Back to Corsair Cove. My favorite thing about the game is the fact that it's a dual gameplay loop, something that I've been highlighting in this video by jumping between the city building portions and the exploration, because you do a fair bit of both. When I first played the game, I found the city building to be the more difficult aspect. Occasionally there are random events that cost cohesion. Lose all of your cohesion, game over. But as I continued to play, and especially as I challenged higher difficulties, I actually found the seafaring to be the more challenging portion. Unless I just stop paying attention, it's pretty difficult to get a true failure spiral. I might have to deal with some unhappy pirates, but it's probably not going to be a game over. And in fact, when it comes to the city building, one of my biggest constraints is often the space itself, leading me to tear down old supply chains and replace them with new ones that are either more efficient or simply involve new resources. Because as you advance from a tier 2 ship to 3 to 4 to 5 all the way up to 6, some resources tend to fall by the wayside, meaning you might not need as many production buildings and can just keep a small stockpile in case of emergency. And so that's what it's like to play Corsair Cove, along with some of the things that I like. So far, I've had a blast with the game, and I've put in about 80 hours. But in that time, the experience hasn't been perfect. So next, I want to talk about some minor frustrations, followed by the thing that I dislike the most about Corsair Cove. So the first thing I dislike has to do with the building, because most of the time, it just works. Like this, I created a rope bridge and it was fine. But occasionally, very rarely, I'll create what looks exactly like a normal bridge, and it won't connect. That's because with a top-down angle, especially if you're zoomed out, like I normally am, it looks like this all connects. But if you zoom in, it's actually placed at a slightly lower level. I think this is because the game's snapping isn't quite aggressive enough. That said, portraying depth in a 3D space in a video game, pretty tough, especially when a player like me is going to zoom all the way out to get a big picture of their city, so this is something that I can easily forgive. My next minor complaint has to do with ships and combat. Each of the ship classes have vastly different stats. Now, fully crewing a ship does double its base stats, so this goes from 12 to 24. But with 24 gun damage, a tier 6 prowler ship is doing about as much damage as a tier 2 destroyer. This means that ships are unsuitable for tasks outside of their specializations. Prowlers are good at maneuverability. They have okay boarding damage. Destroyers are gun damage and armor, direct combat only. Hunters are about speed, and they have decent gun damage as well. And then Reavers are all about boarding damage with decent defense. But I feel like the ships are over-specialized. I'd much prefer one stat that's significantly higher, and all the rest more around a nice mid-range, so I could do some missions, but not all. This is actually how the tier 2 and 4 plus ships feel. These require you to get enough points in 2 trees to unlock, i.e. the Ravager is a Destroyer plus. And if we compare its stats to the base Destroyer, they're much more well-rounded. I wish all of the ships in the game were like this, rather than most of them being like this. And the last pet peeve that I have is how the game doesn't carry all of its resources forward. So I have a bunch of sugarcane farms here, and distilleries, because at one point I needed rum for picaroons. But I just constructed a tier 6 ship here, where I need hardtack, prosthetics, fancy clothing, jewelry, and pistols. Rum is nowhere to be found, and in fact, outside of random events and story missions, I don't need rum at all anymore. I can completely cut this out of my supply chain. And again, I see this as a minor issue because for some people, it could actually be pretty cool that you're moving on to new and better resources. After all, I don't need rum anymore. But if I'm going to be making those fancy clothes, I need to get a supply of pearls, which as it turns out I can find over here. So I'm going to be going ahead and connecting that to my trade network. Combine this with the fact that space is a premium, and yeah, being able to delete a whole bunch of buildings to make room for a new industry does start to make sense. But still, it bugs me a little bit because it feels like some of the work that I put into my pirate haven has now gone to waste, as I'm simply going to replace that with other buildings. But I do have one more complaint about Corsair Cove, and it's a bit of a bigger complaint. In fact, it kind of drives me crazy. I can't track down why this is happening, but occasionally I will just get these crazy weird connections. Like here, I have no idea why this connection exists, so I'm just going to cut it off entirely. Now it's gone. I also have no idea why there's this other crazy connection for sales that goes all the way over here. Because what I wanted to do is create a connection to the sailmaker right here. I suspect, like with the snapping that I mentioned earlier, this is some sort of bug with the game's pathfinding, where it tries to find the closest location, and as you build things, delete things, change connections, something breaks, and it ends up drawing on resources that are much farther away than you intend. So far, it hasn't seemed to cause anything in my city to grind to a halt. Very much to the game's credit, supply lines can be incredibly resilient. But it drives me crazy because everywhere I look, I swear I find random connections that I did not want to make. Oh look, here's another one. Why is this going all the way over here? Why is this galley randomly pulling from this rotisserie? I suspect it's because I put down a building that employed a master hand, so immediately this galley's like, ooh, I must get resources. But then I deleted that building because I realized, oh yeah, I don't have a supply of those resources and I don't want to build one here. So I wish the game would give me the option when opportunities like that arise, but stick to connections nearby unless I explicitly tell it otherwise, especially when all the resources are available within the radius of the warehouse. And so with that, what's the verdict? Corsair Cove has a lot of interesting concepts. The vertical building is unlike anything I've experienced in another city builder. If you've played other city builders with vertical building, please let me know down below. I'm really curious to try them. And the high seas adventures are nicely immersive. Thanks to the cutscenes, voice acting, and colorful captains, they remind me quite a bit of a TTRPG, something like Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder. But I do think, in presenting this dual gameplay loop, Corsair Cove falls a little bit short of the best city builders I've played, and also of the best adventure games that I've played. It does a really good job of drawing on both and blending them, but if either aspect isn't your cup of tea, you're probably not going to enjoy this, because I don't think the other aspect is strong enough to stand on its own and carry the game. And since there's 4 victory paths, and 3 different maps, there's quite a bit of replay value. Recently, I've been going through and trying to do everything in a single run, which is way harder than it sounds. At the very least, up until Tier 6, because I think now that I finally unlocked all the Tier 6 stuff, it's going to get a whole lot easier. Either way, I've been having a blast with Corsair Cove, and I'm going to be making more content about it in the future. So, if a beginner's guide, some tips and tricks, or a run where I see if I can use the power of money to win more easily, any of those things sound up your alley? Then do be sure to get subscribed. Also, check down below because those videos might be out if you're watching this after it releases. Corsair Cove releases on July 31st, 2026, and if you use my next link, also down below, then you can pick up the game and help support me so I can make more videos just like this one. But I'm going to get going for now, because I'm finally at the point where I get to rebuild my entire city so that I can properly crew out 4 Tier 6 ships. It was quite the struggle getting here, and I'm very excited. So thank you very much for watching to the end. I'm glad you've enjoyed. Also, big thanks to Hooded Horse for sending me the key, because I've been having a blast with the game, and I look forward to sharing more in future videos.